Hey, Grace Lake, I am putting out this special episode to give you all some information about the Bachelor, Bachelorette auction and where our funds are going towards when you make donations, when you buy tickets, when you attend the event and bid on auction items. So in just a second, you're going to meet Anthony Diaz. Anthony's story is heartbreaking and inspirational in some ways of family and how family takes care of family. I ask you all to do one thing. Listen into his story. If you can find the kindness of your heart, either buy tickets to the event, come to the event. You can simply make a donation through the ticket link as well. We are still looking for more donations from local businesses. Hey, and right now I think we have about 40 different local businesses that have donated things to this cause for awesome auction items. Plus we have things from Chicago Bears, from the New York Yankees, from all over the place. So this really is a testament to our community and how we can come together all to make a difference. I'm so honored to put this out and to, I know that we have a lot of fun and we put it around lighthearted things, whether we have Bachelor, Bachelorette auction, right? People didn't understand the concept last year and still wrapping their head around this year, but hey, it's fun, and we're trying to do something, a fundraiser, so to say. So, Grace Lake, thank you so much. Share this around, and if you see our posts on Facebook to get people invited and to buy tickets to this event to come, please do. I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you guys listening, whether you listen every week to every episode or you're just tuning in now to find out this story. But I do appreciate you, and I'm honored to bring the stories of Grace Lake and once in a while to do a fundraiser and bring people together. So I look forward to seeing each and every one of you February 15th at First Draft, 7 p.m. Ticket link is all over the place. You can follow on Facebook, Instagram, anywhere. Even see our silliness on TikTok. So. And Anthony, if you're listening, buddy, I really appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing this story with us. So sit back and hear the Diaz family story. Thank you again, Grace Lake. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Discovering Grace Lake. Today we have a very, very special episode, which we're doing over the phone. So I'm happy to welcome Anthony Diaz. Anthony, how are you, buddy?
Hey, Mr. Dave, it's a pleasure to have you. I thank you for reaching out.
Yes. So, anybody that's listening, obviously, unless you're under a rock, you have heard of the Bachelor Bachelorette auction. And this year, the people that we're trying to give a hand up is Anthony and his brother. So.
Yeah, like you said, my name's Anthony Diaz. I'm 28 years old. I'm the oldest brother of my younger siblings, Gabriel Diaz and James Diaz. My parents are Gwendolyn and Tony, who are both recently deceased as of the last couple of years. We moved up here between 2002 and 2004 time, so
Okay.
I've been a resident. We've seen Lake County and Grays Lake and everything grow to what it is now. Yeah, we've moved up here from Chicago when I was about 6 years old. Growing up, I had the two special needs siblings, Gabriel and James. Gabriel, we found out, had some intellectual disabilities when he was about 4 years old because he wasn't quite able to participate getting into preschool and was having some developmental behavioral issues and stuff. And we came to find that he had some developmental disabilities and ADHD and got into school, was enrolled in an IEP and had various therapies and stuff in his younger years and some medication and stuff, when he was younger to help intervene with that.
Right.
Going back to about 2005, my brother Jimmy was born. He was actually born in the back of an acute care center off of Rollins Road in Round Lake. And so my brother James was born in about 20-30 minutes after they got into the acute care center in the back room near where they do the x-rays back there. And,
wow.
Yeah. And they obviously weren't prepared for a situation like that. They rushed my brother over actually to Evanston Hospital at the time, all the way over there.
Yeah.
And then he stayed in the NICU there for about the first 7 to 8 months of his life or so. and he was having respiratory distress. He was born with some other profound disabilities, chronic respiratory diseases. His lungs were collapsing, his airways collapsing. He
Oh my
had
God.
he had some small brain bleeds as well, some heart arrhythmias and stuff. And so we kind of reached a road after we tried to take him home once. We almost lost him at home because of respiratory distress at that 7, 8 month mark. And then we took him over to Lutheran Hospital, and they recommended that the ENT and the pulmonologist that we encountered there, who saved James's life by putting a trach and a G tube in. And that kind of started the journey to James's life, and kind of changed the dichotomy of our lives and the trajectory of our lives, like, forever.
Absolutely.
We grew up having a special needs kid, and that was, difficult to say the least.
Yeah. Very challenging for your parents, I bet.
Yeah, my parents, my parents sacrificed everything, they went all in on, Jimmy, and it wasn't like a little bump in the road for them, and all right, we'll find care for this kid, and then we'll live our lives and that's it. No, my mom, stopped working because she couldn't,
Yeah.
then, and she spent every waking moment of her life advocating, for James, whether it was with social programs, whether it was with a new doctor, whether it was a new diagnosis that came about, early on in life when my brother's seizure disorder started. It was, it started to become a little bit more difficult with hospital stays and doing research, and just constantly, applying the pressure to try to just get the bare minimum done. And my dad grew up in the car business. So he was a service advisor for Chevy Grossinger almost my whole life, and his was only strictly commission, no salary. So, there was times where my dad's checks weren't even enough to cover the insurance portion, and my dad was
Wow.
paying thousands of dollars a month for insurance at that time, for all of James's care.
Right.
And, it put a lot of strain on their health and their life. Early on in life, my dad was diagnosed with, like, really severe Crohn's disease. And at first it was just with the Crohn's disease, all right, you got to go to the hospital sometimes, get steroids and things. And then it was just kind of me and my mom, as a kid with James, helping out with him. And then
Yeah.
a lot of his auto.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. That must have been very trying for a young man growing up, and not like everybody else. That sounds like you lent a lot of help towards him.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of knew, like, I was 9 when James was born, and I just kind of knew immediately, like, this is going to be different.
Right.
I'm not going to be able to ask my parents for certain things at certain times because they're focused with James. I'm not going to be able to go to the other kids' birthday parties because I'm going to have to help out with James. I'm not going to be able to, go and do sports anymore. I wasn't able to do baseball or football or anything. I got pulled out all that when I was younger because, I couldn't participate in a lot of that stuff, when James was first born. And,
Right.
when I remember it like it was yesterday. I was 12 years old, and my mom was like, all right, I'm going to go get Jimmy's meds real quick. Um, we live literally less than a mile away from the Walgreens in Haynesville, Route 120 there. And she's like, I'm going to go get his meds real quick and come back. And I said, okay, that's fine. And she leaves, and on the way back, James starts having his first seizure.
Oh no.
And obviously, I didn't know what that was at the time. I was just like, all right, well, he's shaking and he's starting to turn blue, so he stopped breathing.
Oh,
And
so
so I was like,
scary.
I'm gonna put him on the floor. I put him on the floor, and after James was born, my parents had me attend the CPR class that they took at, at the hospital. And so I started doing CPR on James. and brought him back before the ambulance came, and just kind of described to them, what happened, um, and described to my mom what happened. And then we took him to the hospital, and turned out he had like 104 fever at the time, and it was a febrile seizure, and we got all of our answers then. But I just kind of knew that was when like reality hit me the very hardest. It was like, all right, I need to get my butt in gear. Even though I was 12 at the time, I was like, I need to get my butt in gear, and I have to, prepare myself for these type of situations, and I need to be ready for these things that come about. Um, so I started reading stuff about James and about anatomy, and, learning about his trach and his G-tube and stuff, and asking my mom, hey, can I try this, with suctioning him? And, when she would change his tracheostomy tube out, I would always like, help out and stuff. So by the time I got into high school, I was already, checking pulses and respirations and suctioning and changing trachs and diapers and, whatnot. And, also at that time, was when my dad's autoimmune diseases. He had ankylosing spondylitis, which is a degenerative, disease where, a part of it it's like a really severe version of arthritis. Putting it in layman's
Wow, sounds
terms
horrible.
a bit. And, all of your joints and stuff begin to calcify. They develop calcium deposits. So like, a couple of his ribs were fused to his spine, and a lot of his joints were becoming a lot more rigid and stiff and not able to move around. And he was getting steroid injections and all kinds of stuff. But, I also knew from a very early age, I started in middle school doing all the construction projects and working on the cars and stuff, for him, because he was always the brain, I was always the hands. He couldn't do it he couldn't do it with his body anymore, but he could show me how to do it. So, I was on top of Jimmy and stuff. I was, changing oil and, learning how to solder pipes and stuff, when I was a freshman, because it was just like, this is just what I got to do, to keep the family going. And, at no point in time did I ever feel like, sure, was there times where I was like, all right, I wish I could go and do this, like some normal kids are doing. But at no point in time was I ever like, I want a different family, or I wish things were different. It was just like our term as a family has always been, it is what it is.
Right.
Control what you can, let go of what you can't. I was never going to be able to change my dad's health. I was never going to be able to change Jimmy's health. But I was always able to control, how I helped them, when I helped them,
Right.
To what degree I helped them. Those little extenuating factors I could kind of control, but, it was difficult. And then, getting through high school, it took a toll. It started to really, really take a toll on my parents, my parents' relationship, especially financially, because towards the back end of high school is when my father started to become more disabled, wasn't able to show up to work as often and everything. And his health really started to deteriorate. And then eventually he became full-time disabled.
Oh my gosh.
So no income in the house, no income for me really. My first like actual more serious job was at TJ Maxx in Mundelein.
Yeah.
And I always offered to give my parents whatever they needed whenever they needed it. A lot of the times it was, no, keep that money for yourself for the things that you need, because they can't give me money, to pay for school and gas and different things,
Yeah.
They did the best they could. I did go away my freshman year of college, getting out of high school, because I got a little extra money to play football up in Wisconsin at a school called Concordia.
Oh yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, and that was like torturous though that year, I worked 30 hours a weekend. I worked 15 hours a day on Saturdays and Sundays. I drove home every weekend, 80 miles, so that I could work and have some cash and help my family out, with James on the weekends. But it was difficult, getting called every other week. Oh, this is going on with James. getting calls from my little brother, mom and dad are fighting over the bills again, because we got X, Y, and Z going on, and, having to come back home from school on a random Wednesday night because James has, had a seizure or something, or, so it wasn't the easiest. So I decided to stop going to school up there and came back down here to try to enroll in CLC,
Yeah.
into their nursing program, actually.
Which seems like you had some nursing training before, like from
yeah,
12 years old.
yeah, exactly. So, the first semester or so of that was also very difficult, because that's when my mom's health started to change. Um, my mom going back to, let's see if I'm counting right here. Yeah, 2017. Uh, she started acting a little funny that year. Her behavior started changing going into like the around like the summertime ish of 2016, 17. Um, and we were like, all right, well, maybe mom's just changing. Life's getting, a little harder with dad and everything. Things are getting more difficult, that's anybody's going to change, and
Sure.
she just began to get, more depressed, and it was just harder in the house to, maintain and getting things done. And uh, one night I am talking with the night nurse as she got in, and my mom, I remember, had a glass of wine that night, and she was talking a little funny. And so me and the nurse thought, maybe my mom had more than one glass of wine or something,
Right.
if she
How
was
big
drunk.
was the one glass, right?
Right, and because she's talking funny and kind of stumbling around the house, and we're like, what the heck? Like, is she drunk? Like, what's going on? And lo and behold, I hear a huge boom in the bathroom downstairs, and she's in front of the door. I bust the door open finally, and I break the door and get into the bathroom, and she's like passed out on the floor. And so I call the ambulance right away, and I wake her up, and half of her face is kind of sagging.
Oh no.
And I'm like, oh God, she's having a stroke. And
Yeah.
so call the ambulance, everything. They come, and she's acting real erratic out of it. And I'm like, please take her, but she's lucid enough to try and say no. And so I'm like, you guys got to take her, please. I beg them, beg them. They take her to Condell Hospital finally after 30, 40 minutes of begging. And I'm begging the doctors there. I'm like, my mom's not just some drunk crazy lady. You have to scan her head. Please scan her, please. And so they're like, all right, we'll give her a head scan. And they give her a head scan. And lo and behold, they find a tumor that's a little bit bigger than a walnut in her right frontal lobe. And so, um,
Wow.
uh, about we immediately, she gets transferred to Northwestern. We get coordinated with the brain surgeon down there, Dr. Chandler. He says, yep, this is a tumor. This thing's got to go. Mom's going to die. We're going to reduce a lot of the swelling over the next few days here as best as we can, and then we're going to go in and try to get it out. And so we went, okay. She got that craniotomy done and got the tumor out, and then she recovered extremely well, actually. And she was like, my mom was a go-getter. She wasn't stopping anything for anybody, and hardly ever asked for any help at all, even though we would try to force it on her as often as possible.
Right.
And she's driving my brother to school, 3 weeks after the fact, with stitches, with staple marks still on her head.
Wow.
And still insisting on trying to stay up with James when the night nurse called in, because, some of the nurses that we had, I loved them to death, but they weren't always the most reliable. And so, there'd be nights where they'd call in and she'd have to, be up for 2-3 days at a time. And I would say, no, go upstairs, go upstairs, go upstairs. And she's like, no, you have work, you have school, you have this, and it just, it was a difficult time. And then, we got through that period, and, Jimmy's health stuff stayed consistent through that time, regular hospitalizations for respiratory illnesses, periodic seizures and stuff. None of that ever really let up. And, we fast forward about a year. Um, I forgot what was going on, but my dad felt uh, a lump by my mom's breast. And because my dad was always, he'd be like, look, your aunt had breast cancer, your mom had cancer, like we need to check, periodically and stuff. And he checks, he's like, oh, I feel something, honey. Takes her to the hospital. Takes her to a regular doctors and everything. She gets a mammogram. We find out she has breast cancer
Oh my goodness.
about a year and a half after the fact. And then we immediately start a regimen. She ends up getting a mastectomy of the left side, along with removing some of the lymph. She goes through her treatment and everything over at Condell, and about a year and a half, she ends up going into remission. And just like everything else in life, she handled that very gracefully.
Your mom's tough.
Yeah, very, very much so. She's still, staying up with James, still cooking dinner every night, still trying to maintain a relationship with my father and making dinner and trying to hang out with him at nighttime and stuff. And, still trying to, rub his back and stuff at the end of the day, cause, he's hurting and stuff too. And, again, that despite anything, it still weighed a lot on my parents' relationship. And,
Oh, I'm sure.
I love my father and my parents, to death, but, the fact of the matter is my dad could have been a lot better of a husband than he was at the time. And, woulda, coulda, shoulda, could have been a little more helpful with her and stuff. So it definitely increased the stress in the home. And so she goes into remission, and about 6 months into that, she starts having some women's health challenges and some uteral prolapsing and stuff. So she ends up having to get a full hysterectomy. So she gets a full hysterectomy done, and that was I can't imagine what that's like, right? You and I are both men, and we don't have to.
Right.
We cannot and will not ever relate to any of those women's health challenges and what that feels like, to go through. So she goes through that, and that was a very difficult recovery for her physically and mentally, I think. And a little bit after that, she's about a year or two after that, she starts going and having some kidney troubles. And we find out that her kidneys are failing, and then that suffers consequence on her liver. Her liver starts failing, and so she gets put on dialysis after being diagnosed with ESRD, end-stage renal disease. And she's going on dialysis and everything. And while on dialysis 3 days a week, she's still taking care of James. She's still trying to maintain our house.
Right.
She is still trying to be James's night nurse. She is still trying to do everything she can to just be a mom.
Right.
And obviously, I'm at that time working 40 and 50 hours a week, because my dad is of no income, my mom is no income. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's a lot, man. You've been through a ton.
Yeah, I knew that it was completely and utterly done, when, I found her in the house. I came home one day, and she's crawling across the floor on her hands and knees trying to get to James.
Oh my God.
To give him some medicine.
Yeah.
Because we lost our nursing care at this time. The reason that we lost our nursing care, I have trouble sharing and talking about the real reason we lost our nursing care was because of, my father. My father was, as I shared in my writing, he was a military veteran. My dad was in the Army during Desert Storm. He was actually trained to be a police officer in Miami, when I was just after I was born, but my mom didn't want to move down to Florida and yada yada. And so that's why he found a different career path going into the car business and stuff at the back end of the 90s, going into the early 2000s. And, he was a pillar of his community, and, he volunteered when he could. He donated money when he could, even when we had none. He gave people breaks constantly at work. saving him a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of heartache. And, he just took care of people.
Right.
And, he always taught us, do unto others as you want done unto you. And, raised us on all the 10 commandments and every God's golden rule you can think of. But, towards the end of his life, a lot of his health challenges, personally, a lot of the things that, men and women both go through completely unspoken that they don't share with others, I'm sure started to just weigh heavy on his mind and his soul.
Yeah.
And, my mom did a lot of the slack as far as the care regarding James, and he was having to suddenly now not just be go to work and come back home dad and just worry about trying to get the finances done, and my wife picks up every other piece.
Right.
And he was starting to get involved with Social Security, and we fought for about 4 or 5 years trying to get his disability started. And you get into November of 2022, and that's when James got really sick. So James ended up getting RSV in November of 2022. And this is around the same time that my mom, we ended up having to put her in a nursing home in Waukegan, because her health was too bad to maintain at home.
Oh my God.
And so I take James to the hospital one November night, because he was having some respiratory distress. And we come to find that he has RSV. He's starting to lose his ability and stuff to breathe on his own already at the Condell emergency room. They say he's way too critical here and all of our beds are full. So we take him to University of Chicago down on the south side.
Yeah.
And he goes into cardiorespiratory arrest twice there. Once in the ambulance with my dad, and then they get him back. We get him into the children's ICU there. And I'm going like 120 on the highway into the city with Gabriel. And as soon as me and Gabriel get to the doors, bam, right through the doors of the ICU, he starts going into arrest again. And so they start working on him for a couple minutes. They bring James back. My dad's completely obviously distraught, just kind of collapsed on the floor. And I'm just standing there, a few feet away from my brother, just with my arms crossed, kind of zoned out, watching, making sure everybody's doing everything that they can right now, to bring James back.
Right.
And so you got a million people working on him. They get him going again. They're like, all right, his heart's failing. It's clotting. We need to get him on life support. Do you approve of this? Obviously, I am like, yes. And so they do the first operation to get ECMO. And also it's called BVAD. So BVAD is biventricular support. So he had support not only on the right or left side of his heart, but on both. And so they do that first surgery. They get everything in place. It goes as well as that really can. They get out of surgery. They let us know, all right, this is all hooked up to him. It's all working technically as it should. But his mitral valve has a small tear on it. He has a little bit of thickening of his right wall of his heart. And we're also finding some blood clots in his ventricle and around his mitral valve. On both sides, actually, and it could possibly, eject into his brain or, cause an aneurysm somewhere. So we have to go in again and we have to clear out these clots. So they go in, they clear out the blood clots and everything. He's like, no chance that this is actually, there's slim chance that this is actually going to work out well. I just want you to anticipate, that this could not go well and you'll have to get your affairs in order and yada, yada. And so, my dad's kind of distraught at this time. My brother, obviously, Gabriel, doesn't really know what's going on. Can't necessarily fully wrap his head around it.
Right.
And so I decided, yes, let's do the surgery. Let's get this done. Because if he's gonna go, we're gonna go out trying.
Right.
So we do the surgery. He gets the clots out. And he goes, well, I can't believe it, but his heart's like recovering and,
Wow.
things are kind of, going about the way that I thought they shouldn't, but they are.
Well, it's like a miracle.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
and then a day or so goes by and you're like, all right, well, he's doing good, but he's starting to form, some pressure like around, uh, left side of his lung. So they end up putting another catheter in just to reduce some of that pressure. Time goes by and he starts recovering well. And they're like, all right, well, we can take these catheters out and monitor his heart and everything. So we take all the catheters out and he starts bouncing back. And,
Oh,
uh,
he's a fighter, man.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah. And then he gets into the lower level ICU there at the hospital and starts getting his therapies and various, medical interventions that were necessary at the time. And, going into January, ECMO was placed at, back, going into November, and then we're getting into December that he's in the ICU recovering still, and then he's getting out of the ICU into like more of a step down unit by about January. And then my mom's health, all of a sudden we're living out of the Ronald McDonald House. Let me not get too ahead of myself down there
Yeah.
in the city, and we're just kind of taking turns. My dad goes to Ronald McDonald House while I'm in the hospital recovering, with James, advocating and answering questions, following up with doctors, everything. And then my dad would go, sometimes go home to the house, make sure because we have a dog, make sure the dog's good. Grab some more clothes and everything, grab his medications and stuff that he needs at the time, comes back down, at home, and then comes back to the hospital. We would kind of trade off that way, just to maintain the house, and going back and forth, sleeping at the Ronald McDonald House there, which is an amazing charity. I highly recommend anybody out there, if they ask you to round up, do it, because they're taking care of a lot of people across the country and their families. I mean, we did not have to cook one meal. We didn't have to worry about where we were going to stay, laundry, like counseling services, everything is in house there, and they take care of you there.
That's amazing.
So yeah, Ronald McDonald House Charities are truly a fantastic organization. I don't ever really agree with many corporate conglomerates, but that is one of the ones that I will back, in that aspect anyhow. But going into January, my mom's health started to really decline. And in between James being in the hospital, obviously we're also rotating to my mom. Taking on and off. Everybody gets kind of a shift, trying to go to my mom and visit her and make sure that the nursing home, because we all know how that goes. Is doing what they need to do to take care of her.
Sure.
And we had her birthday's on January 19th, so we had a little birthday party for her in the rec room there at the nursing home, and I could tell my mom was just not doing good at all, just not always lucid, not always like remembering things like in the moment and stuff, and that kind of comes with the buildup of ammonia and stuff with dialysis patients. Sometimes it becomes toxic and they become a little bit, not mentally stable and stuff, and I just knew. I was like, all right, well, I don't know how much longer mom's got, and then 2 days after her birthday, she developed an infection, and things progressed pretty fast. And then on no, just January 23rd in the evening, they're like, all right, well, kind of our last effort here is, we can try to intubate your mom and then put her on rigorous like 24-hour dialysis and see what that does.
Yeah.
And, my mom was like, always like, and that during that period, she's like, I want to try to make it, for James, to try to see James again.
That must have been really hard for her.
Yeah, because, she spent every single waking moment of her life, dedicating her existence, to her kid.
Yeah.
I mean, not leaving his moment for a waking second of his life. My mom was by his side, and she she obviously didn't get to do that because after they tried to intubate her, it just didn't work.
Right.
So we're like, all right, well, your mom's, she's going to end up passing. And so, we obviously just stayed with her in the hospital from the 23rd until the 25th when she passed in the morning. And then,
I'm sorry for your
yeah,
loss, Tony.
thanks.
That's really hard. And it sounds like your mom, no matter what she was going through, that she always put your brother first. Like she
Oh
was
yeah.
more worried
Oh,
about him than anything to do with herself.
oh yeah. And I found notes from a phone call she tried to have with his Social Security caseworker from like the week before she died.
Oh
Like,
my
and I
gosh.
didn't even know that she was still trying to talk to the caseworkers, and like she couldn't even remember her own age sometimes,
Right.
but she still just was trying to do whatever she possibly could, trying to call the UIC and trying to call the hospital and find out, different things on her own, even though we're updating her, even though we're keeping her fully in the loop and trying to call her and let her know. And I'm sending her pictures and videos and trying to FaceTime call and stuff, as often as I can just to, give her something to look forward to. Hey, we shaved James today. Hey, James, opened his eyes today, stuff like that. And it just
Yeah.
kind of kept her going. But, I think just her soul was too tired, she fought and fought and fought and fought tooth and nail,
Yeah.
and until she just literally couldn't, and, that night before they intubated her, even though she wasn't lucid enough to say, oh, my birthday is this, my birthday is that. She looked at me and she said, I'm tired, buddy. She's like, I don't think I can, keep on doing this. And I said, Mom, I want to do whatever you want to do. I said, if you want to go to sleep, you go to sleep. If you want to keep going, you keep going. I'm going to do whatever you want to do, and that's what I encourage anybody to do when someone's in a predicament like that is you don't get to make the selfish choice at that moment to decide what this person's going to do. They get to decide that, right?
Absolutely.
A part of your humanity is your dignity, and if, you can't maintain that any longer, then what are we doing here, And
Right.
she's like, I'm tired, I don't think I can do this, and it was like like that sliver, that break of like, no, this is her talking to me right now,
Right.
and, she said, I love you. And that was kind of like her last like lucid kind of moment. And, she passed that morning, and then I wrap up all the paperwork and stuff with my dad at the hospital, and we get her prepared, everything. And then I walk out into the parking lot, and the hospital calls me with James. James just had a seizure.
Oh
We
my
want to let you
goodness.
know. Yeah, like literally like 30 minutes to an hour, like after my mom passed. Like James had a seizure. We administered his medication. He's doing okay, everything. And so I just immediately from the hospital after my mom passed, I just get my clothes, and then I go down to the hospital with James. And so I go down to the hospital with James, everything. Um, and he was okay, and he was fine. It was just a quick seizure, and he recovered okay and everything, and they did him well there. So that was just a little intense. Yeah.
For sure. So you look up at the
Yeah.
sky and go, okay, how much more are you going to test me with?
Yeah, like come on, man. And then he was like just a little bit more, a little sprinkle, because at that time my dad also contracted RSV, and then he ended up in the hospital for about 3 weeks there in their adult unit across on the other side of UIC.
Oh, wow.
And so I was having to, deal with, and this was like just before my mom was like passing, and my dad had kind of recovered as my mom passed kind of thing, So it was like my dad couldn't even really be around my mom because he had RSV. So he
Right.
couldn't really even say bye to his wife fully either until she was like not even with it anymore.
Right.
And, yeah, so that was real difficult. And then,
Yeah.
James starts recovering. He goes to La Rabida Children's Hospital. He gets going. He's doing well and everything. My dad ended up actually having another breakdown there at the hospital after he fully recovered and everything. So I think everything mentally was just too much for my dad to handle between my mom passing, my brothers, improving but still having some dilemmas. And everything, and then just trying to get things organized at the house, worrying about me and Gabriel, everything. He has another mental breakdown there at the hospital. The hospital police call me. The counselors call me. Oh, we can't find your dad and this and
Oh my
everything. I'm like,
gosh.
oh, great, And so I just find out he's just behind the Ronald McDonald House crying in his car. That's all it was. And they were just really worried about him.
Yeah.
And so I just am like, you know what, you come home, and I just pretty much managed James for like 3 weeks or so, just kind of on my own at Ronald McDonald House. And then fast forward a few months, June of 2023, we finally found a nursing agency that can take James at home. They only have a couple CNAs to offer. James comes home. We're home for, from June until maybe a few months, and he has like 1 or 2 hospitalizations between then, just from some like respiratory illnesses. And then you fast forward to July of 2023, and my dad has a really bad stomach ache for like 2, 3 days.
Oh, no.
And he ends up going to the hospital because he thinks he's having just a terrible Crohn's attack. Because he's had those his entire life. He's like, but it just feels a little different. We take him, you're like, all right, well, we want to get some scans done. And they're like, well, we see a little something on your pancreas. Let's see what that is. And then he gets an oncology consult after the scan and everything. We do a biopsy. And then I remember that Monday, they're like, yep, your dad has pancreatic cancer. And his dad, my grandfather, passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2014. My grandpa died. That was like one of my first instances with like death, dying, and bereavement,
Right.
if you will.
Yes.
Was with my grandfather, who I was very close to as well, and he died of pancreatic cancer. So I was like, there goes my dad too. I just didn't know whether it was going to be 3 months, because we got like 6 to 8 months, I want to say, with my grandfather before he passed, but we only got from July to October with my dad, and
Wow.
he ended up electing, even though we saw like with a lot of other family members, I've had other people pass from cancer and stuff as well in the family, but we saw with some other people like, all right, well, maybe there could be some successes, and even if not success, maybe you can have a little bit more time with your family. And so even though I didn't really want him to, he elected for chemo anyways, just to try to get things planned out. My mom canceled. We found out after my mom died that she canceled her life insurance.
Oh, man.
Like almost a year before the fact. And, my dad tried to get some, a small plan reinstated before he passed. And, we tried to get a lot of that organization stuff done.
Yeah.
And then, October 8th or 7th of 2023, we actually had a meeting with with the banker and everybody to get the accounts converted, and we were going to try to meet with like a lawyer the next week that his old lawyer was going to try to get us set up with, to try to get, like maybe a trust established or some type of like, financial things put together, since we've never done that our whole lives. And
Right.
again, God rest my parents' soul, but they just weren't privy to a lot of the financial stuff.
Sure.
And we didn't get to do that because he ended up getting a severe infection that week, and then he spent the next week in the hospital. And my grandmother and aunt kind of looked after James while I stayed as often as I could with my dad, doing anything I got to do, from wiping butts to giving enemas to,
Right.
the down and dirty, you do what you got to do. They did it for me once when I was little, so this is the least that I could do now. And he ended up passing the morning of October 13th.
Wow.
And he about the same night that my dad passed, my aunt started having problems and stuff, so I took her to the hospital actually like 4 or 5 hours after my dad passed away, and I sat with her in the hospital and just trying to get some answers for what was going on with her. And so it was like, and then about a week after that, James went to the hospital with pneumonia for like 2.5 weeks. So I never even got the chance, my brother and I, we never really got the chance to fully even process like,
No.
any of what happened. And, just since my dad passed away, there's been, some challenges, obviously, just trying to learn the finances to a family system that has disabled children in it, organizing things appropriately, just ensuring that they're also as happy and healthy as possible,
Right.
and then also just trying to maintain myself. I haven't always been successful at doing so. People tell me I'm doing okay. I don't generally believe them because I'm a tough self-critic. I always feel like I could be doing a little bit more,
Right.
whether it's for myself, my brother, my friends, my family, my community. I went to our HOA meeting last night, despite anything going on, in the house.
Wow.
Just trying to, I can't allow, what happened to my parents be the driving force to the rest of my life. It feels like it is a lot of the time. It feels as though the identity of myself and my family has just been that of like pain and strife and, like a constant like up down battle of like really long periods of pain, a short period of triumph, and then on to the next. And I think that's how life is for, just about everybody, to varying degrees. And people kind of tell me like, no, dude, you've been through a lot. Like,
Well, you definitely have. That is for certain. So now, because I'm sure like with both of your parents passing, the torch gets passed to you and you get to take care of your two brothers, and they obviously are depending on you.
Yeah.
So I'm sure with this, because one thing I want to identify for everybody that's listening is, what are the needs? What do you need help with? What are your biggest challenges, as far as that goes? Because it sounds like, how do you work with James? Are you able to?
I mean, I technically don't like work outside of the house. I get paid by the nursing agency because I wasn't able to finish my RN completely at CLC, because I had to step out of school, obviously, as I shared.
Right.
But I completed my CNA a while before that because that's a prerequisite for their nursing program there.
Right.
So even though I didn't work all my hours, they were able to reinstate my CNA, with the state, with the nursing agency, and then also with like DSCC, who oversees some of James's, and helps coordinate some of James's care. And so they were able to designate me as his CNA.
Oh, that's good.
And then Gabriel is actually like kind of the guardian on file, so that I have the ability to work with him. Because if I was the guardian on file, then they wouldn't want me working, with James. And we've designated all this, with the state, and they're aware of like the situation, and
Right.
so the things aren't like improperly or illegally aligned or something. All the ducks are in order, appropriately. But it sucks because I want to get things, filed accordingly with, James, so that he's like, mine, and maybe even be able to work outside of the house again.
Right.
Because, working with the agencies, I don't get insurance. They don't have insurance plans with the agency that I have. So I currently have no insurance because I make too much for, to have like Medicaid. But with like the bills I pay and different things, a lot of that money is gone, by the end of the month.
Absolutely.
But our needs now, isn't as much, financially, as they are trying to get counseling, for my family, trying to also get the appropriately structured, like bank accounts or like a special needs trust or something for James. And, because I can't have James losing his insurance. I can't have, James's supplies alone, like retail at $4,270 per month. Just the 30-day supplies for James, to keep him going for 1 month. It's $4,000 in supplies on a recurring basis. I don't pay that out of pocket, but if you were to lose, any of his insurance or anything,
Absolutely.
then, that would, entirely be the case. And then, I also, because I was scared of the monetary aspect of how much things were to cost to get things organized appropriately, I have just kind of, I have James's POAs and stuff in place so that I can make a decision for him, medically and stuff. But like, our home isn't in our name yet. My parents owe a significant amount of money to the homeowners association because they simply could not, pay that homeowners association cost, for my neighborhood.
Sure.
And so that kind of financial burden has unfortunately been passed down to me, and it's, a number in the tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
And, my parents also had to refinance, this loan numerous amount of times throughout our life. So, I don't even have the home, in my name yet. I've just been paying, the mortgage, through my accounts, but, more just seeking like the legal advice and everything of what direction I need to go in just to start our lives.
Right.
And, cause it's hard when you grow up getting so many notices, whether it's
Oh, I'm sure it has to be extremely stressful.
a eviction notice, late notice, to not assume like, oh, these are going to come again. Even though I'm paying the bills in my head, I still have a heart attack every time I have to open up a letter in the mail, even though it could be something positive. My heart's still ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom.
Wow.
And so I think just able to have somebody help organize us and advise us in a
Sure.
direction. I can run with the ball. I just got to get the ball first, and I have to get the direction I need to run first. I gotta know the play. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Wow. Yes. And those are things that I hope that, maybe throughout our community, and maybe somebody listening here, and maybe some of our friends in the community can reach out and hopefully help you with things like that. You have a lot on your plate, brother. A lot on your plate.
yeah,
You're doing a great job.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm learning my way, just like anybody else.
Sure.
I just had some more adversity, thrown our way. But
Right. Well, it sounds like the story of your family, from your parents to you and everything, is, self-sacrifice for the ones we love, for our children, for our, siblings. It's not an easy thing.
yeah, absolutely.
And two, I want to, also, so I got your name through, the Seedall Foundation, which
Mhm.
I just found is just absolutely wonderful. Those people over there are a blessing to many, that is for sure.
Yes.
Unbelievable. So your brothers today, you said that when we started our phone call, when I called you, that James is off
Mhm.
to school. So is he at,
Yep.
where does he go?
Yeah, James goes to Laramont over in Gages Lake through the CEDAL network. He's attended there since he was like near a baby. And they've done fantastic with him there. And then, Gabriel, actually, he attended regular school systems, but with special needs classes. But he actually, it's funny, like full circle, small world. Miss Collins, one of the superintendents, for the district, and then, Gina, the assistant principal, who is an amazing human being. Shout out to Gina. That they've always helped, coordinate everything with James, but she also helped with Gabriel in his younger life. So, Laramont and the people that work there have literally been a part of our lives, like almost as long as I can remember. So I highly encourage anybody and everybody, if they can, to try to participate in anything that the CEDAW Foundation ever has going on. Because, clearly you're hearing it from me now, proof's in the pudding, right? That, they impact a lot of people's lives, and they quite literally change the trajectory of, people's lives over there.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people feel helpless, and to have people like that can really be a positive reinforcement to be there, not only to help, but knowing that there are places to go and there are people to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is very cool. So as we end here, we are looking forward to doing whatever that we can at our fundraising event. And if there's anything special that comes up for you, your brothers, anything that they need, even if it's just maybe something that's not a necessity, but to improve quality of life or to make them smile, that you may not do on a regular basis, we'd love to do anything, because I think sometimes we just need a little break. Sometimes we need a little just things to make your day a little brighter.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate this a lot. People say that, I appreciate it a lot. Thank you so much. And sometimes it's a little more surface value, but, I truly, really do. I look at it as a little bit more of a godsend, and, my parents taking care of us, because I'm a little bit more spiritual that way. But,
Yes.
I also just wanted to take a moment and, thank God and, thank you as well. For becoming a part of our lives. And, I'm very thankful for the Seedall Foundation, and, especially during, not to, turn the conversation into that direction, but, with everything that goes on right now around us in the news and the things that we're constantly, being fed, and the imminent changes that are around us, be it mostly negative in people's eyes, and in reality, it's great to see, people being communicative, people being helpful, people being kind, and just having like core human values that we should all have. So I really, really do appreciate you, a lot, Dave, because, it's good to hear. And it's also just kind of a relief of everything that's currently going on. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners now, can kind of identify with that, it's nice to hear a lighthearted conversation over like, hey, the world is ending.
Right. Amen. Amen to that. I'm glad you say that too. And I think that it's an honor for me to be able to do something so simple as trying to get community together to do something really good. And it restores my faith in humanity to see people gather together and maybe put differences aside or whatever it is to gather for a common cause to do some good, right? Because talking to you and other things I've seen, I feel more fortunate every day for healthy children, for, good family around us. And I think it's all important that a gut check to how good we have it. And when we have the opportunity to give a hand up to help out with something, that we all should, right? Because that's what makes the world a better place.
Absolutely.
I thank you so much for being vulnerable, sharing your story with me, and allowing me to record it here to share. And we look forward to meeting. Are you going to make it out? Do you think you can come and say hello at our event?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. Me, James, and Gabriel will, hopefully I'll be there. As long as Jimmy's happy and healthy, I'll bring him with. If not, it may just be me, but I will absolutely be there.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate you, and we're going to do the best we can to see you. But please reach out if you know something to make your brother smile, even if it's not a necessity. I really want you to do that. And for you, I want you to take care of yourself. So if there's something we could do just for fun for you, I would love to do that.
Thank you very much, brother.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. God bless you, and I'll be looking forward to meeting you in person very soon.